This is our orange and yellow food. So, like, this isn't orange, right? But on the inside, when you see this kombucha squash, on the inside it's very orange. And these hard winter squash, I think the easiest way to clean them would be with your veggie brush. Those families that come to our little Cooking with Marilyn classes could get one of these veggie brushes. So again, just scrub the outside of that squash really good with, you could probably just use your hands, but the brush works really well. And of course you would do that before you do any of your cutting to get rid of any dirt or bug stuff from the squash that you're getting ready to prepare. Okay, so we're getting ready to make this recipe called Spicy Baked Squash. It uses an acorn squash. And I'm going to try to get this little guy off of here so that I can make it a little more stable on that cutting board as opposed to, this should be the lengthwise. Okay, this may or may not be successful. You may or may not use my voice. Okay, so we're cutting through the squash lengthwise, making sure that we, keep our fingers safe. It is so pretty inside the squash. I can already see how orange it is. Save that squash. Look at that gorgeous thing. We're going to scoop out the seeds. So really, this spoon is just a plastic spoon. It's working really well to clean out the insides of this, to get rid of all the, sort of the, let's see what they might call that, besides the seeds. All this stringy stuff, okay? You're trying to get rid of that. There might be some left, but definitely get all the seeds. So we're going to do that to both halves. All these different squash and pumpkins, you can bake these seeds and actually eat them. Have a recipe today for people to do that. I'm probably not going to keep these, but just know that there's some nutrition in those little seeds. So there you go. I'm going to call that cleaned out. So we're keeping this squash, of course, flat on our cutting board. And our instructions say to make slices a 1/2 inch thick. They're so pretty. Look at that. So I'm just going along here and, eyeball and a 1/2 inch all the way. And it's not super hard to cut this acorn squash. The hardest part was that cutting it in half. That was challenging, so always make sure you're keeping that hand safe. A true chef would better know how to do this, but I think we're doing okay. I think part of it's because my cutting board is large enough to accommodate this squash. That's kind of thick. This is a butternut squash. It doesn't have to be peeled, but I kind of like to peel mine. Always peel away from yourself to not hurt yourself. Don't come toward you. And that may seem like a simple instruction, but it surprises me. I'm not hitting the ball, but that's not important. Again, you wouldn't have to peel this. We're going to do another one. What a riot, because I'm peeling up so high. Okay. This is my butternut squash that I've kind of peeled a little bit. I cut the top off, again, because I want a flat bottom to cut through the middle of it. I'm just sort of gently getting through there. And once you're about 1 inch or so through, you should be fine. You're going to need a pretty good size heavy knife for this. And there she is. She's cut in half. And just like the last one, we're going to take out those seeds. Look how orange that is. And then I'm peeling this one, and then I'm going to cube it up. Really, again, with all squash, you can choose whether you want to use the peel or not. You might try it both ways, and then you'll figure out the way you like it the best. We're mostly roasting squash today in the oven, but you can also cube up squash and saute it in a skillet as well. I'm gonna cube up this butternut squash, and what we decided to do, because it was hard to peel, that we're gonna have some that's peeled and some that's not peeled, and we're gonna see which one we like the best. And I'm just gonna cut it up in, let's see what they're gonna look like. Ideally, you know, when you do this, all your shapes are about the same size, so they cook evenly. I'm not sure how good I'm going to do there, but is that along that lines? Okay. And there's some without peel, and then there's going to be some with peel. Let's keep my hand safe here. There's a cute little piece that looks like a rainbow. But this is so orange. That tells you it's got a lot of vitamin A, beta carotene in it. It's good for your immune system and great for your vision. And there went one on the floor for the dog. Do you know that squash would be good for your dog if you have a dog? This pan we might season with some, I think I brought, let's see what we brought over there, Abby. Rosemary, no, let's see, the marjoram and the leafy stuff. Marjoram and thyme, yeah. And a little salt and maybe pepper. So this one's going to be a little more savory, meaning it's not adding sweet, but more of your herby flavors. And then the acorn squash is going to be coated with some brown sugar, so it's going to be more of a sweet flavor. So we got a squash laid out on the pan. We're going to sprinkle with a little salt. And then it says to melt the margarine, which we did that in a little cup. So there's 3 tablespoons of, actually this is butter. You could really use oil too, but I think, yeah, butter just adds a lot of flavor to a lot of things. So I'm just sprinkling that on top, like it says. I think that will probably make it pretty yummy when we're all done. But again, if you'd prefer to use oil, if you have margarine, whatever works for you. We're going to sprinkle the brown sugar on there, which I have. And our recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. In my little brown sugar cup, I have a measuring device that's probably about 2 tablespoons. So I'm just going to start sprinkling that right on top. Maybe get half that much again. Some pieces are going to have a little more than others, but it all still looks pretty good to put in the oven here pretty soon. And then I think, actually, we're just going to use that much. And on top of that, we're going to add the cinnamon, the nutmeg, and the ginger. And I might just be sprinkling cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. Yeah, a sprinkle of ginger. That's not something you want to use too much of. At least I don't. I don't mind ginger, but I don't want it to be too strong. If you don't have ginger, that's okay. If you don't have nutmeg, if these all seem like spices that would either be not in your cabinet, then you could buy, like our friend Beth here at class said, if you got some pumpkin pie spice at home, it's about the same thing. Cinnamon is one of those things that is not a heavy flavor, so that's why it calls for a teaspoon instead of a fourth a teaspoon of the others. If it scares you to not measure, then measure it and sprinkle it on. But I have a daughter that says, season with love, Mom. These are gonna go in the oven. It says 400 for 20 to 25 minutes. This is a kombucha squash. We're gonna try to, yeah, it has the same feel that that butternut squash did. You can get in there. I'm gonna come up and go over to the other side so that it's also, it's not super hard. As long as you have a good strong surface and a good knife. And it's pretty flat on the bottom. So let's look at that. Oh, it's more yellow. Isn't that cool? So we have more yellow in this one. Let's get the bowl to scoop out those seeds. Oh, this smells a little flowery like. You can go online and read about the different kinds of squash. It was fun to do that getting ready for class today and how they all have a slightly different sort of flavor. I have never eaten a kombucha squash, so I'm excited about trying this today. I'm just getting rid of those seeds like we did the other one. We'll cube it up. We're going to leave the peel on this because Amy looked it up for us and it said eat the peel and all. So let's do that today. Just trying to make these the same size as the other squash I have ready in the pan. But it does seem a little softer when I cut through it than the butternut squash does. A little bit different texture. And on this squash, we're going to sprinkle salt, pepper, and we're going to do some marjoram. If you have never heard of that, don't worry about it. Just use what you have. Thyme's a really good one to use. If you like the spices that are on pizza, you could even just do Italian seasoning if that's what you've got.
Rosemary?
Rosemary. I almost brought rosemary, but she's not my favorite spice. I like her flavor, but if you get one of her in your mouth, then it's just a funny texture. So rosemary didn't ride along today. So we've got our two kinds of squash cut up here, and I'm just going to drizzle a little olive oil on these. And then we're going to do those seasonings. Salt, pepper, and the thyme and the marjoram is what we have today. And you know what? If you don't have any of those spices and you just do salt and pepper, that'll be great too. You don't have to go spend money on these spices. That is fine. It's just something that I happen to have in my cabinet at home. It sounded yummy. It does make it look really pretty though. Those little green pieces, even if you had parsley, but and I always tell people a nice place to go shopping for spices that's not super expensive is the dollar store or Big Lots, any place like that. So this is going to go in the oven also at 400 and probably also for about 30 minutes, but we'll see. We'll check it around 30 minutes and see how it's doing. So what we have right here is something called butternut squash bread, and basically it's required a butternut squash to be just baked in the oven and pureed, which kind of turned it into like homemade butternut squash baby food, which was cool. And then we'll have the recipe on or available, but you know, just like making pumpkin bread. It's got the oil and sugars and lots of spices like cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and nutmeg. That would be basically like pumpkin pie spice in a bread. So we have a couple people here that are going to try this bread and get some vitamin A. We're going to take our last recipe out of the oven. Woo! It's hot in there. Which is just those two kinds of squash baked in little chunks. I bet you can see the steam in that picture. We're all really enjoying all the recipes we're trying today, so Now we're gonna try this savory one. We already had the sweet one.